Morning, guys. How's it going? So, there's somebody singing in the background. It's quite interesting. So, anyway, the round robin of consent. This is not just in the kink world, although it's a lot emphasized in the kink world these days. And it gets to the point of where you say, okay, babies have got to give consent. You're violating the consent of a child if you're getting them to hug a relative that they don't like, or because they're smelly or something like that. Now, two minds about this. Three minds, many minds, lots of shades of grey, I would say. Consent, enthusiastic consent, I don't know about that, but just being aware and in knowledge of what you're doing, the consequences of it, and still doing it anyway, even though you know it could possibly be, risky, is one of the things that come up in BDSM and kink. Now, quite a few people believe that they are aware and that they know everything that they could about any particular kink, and they do it anyway, and something happens that they didn't expect, and all of a sudden it's a consent violation, which to me is well, things happen, life happens, unexpected things happen. That's just the way life is. Now, when you're talking about consent in the real world, they talk about, kids having to give consent to be hugged or touched or whatever. And it leads me into thinking something really kind of interesting about the continued infantilisation of people, and it's starting with the kids. And that you're saying, okay, then they know about consent from a young age. Go, yes, but they're also not knowing or learning about social interactions, like actual adult social interactions, to be able to differentiate and know just by looking at somebody, their posture, the environment, the vibe, whether they are actually violating a consent or not. Because realistically, those are the things that people aren't going to say or talk about. And the kids are going to grow up expecting that if people are a little uncomfortable, they'll just say, I'm uncomfortable at that, when that is just totally not true, because there is a give and take within society, a part of the societal contract, if you will, where you give up or you compromise a bit of who you are in order to get along with the people that you're around, in order to enhance what goes on in society and get things done. If you say, oh no, I live my life the way I want to go, yeah, but you've also, think about it, the people that you surround yourself with, some people you've managed to get to the point where you can pretty much say or do anything, but there are also things when you're going to sort of change the way you say things, such as, you're not just going to say, you know what, that's just a stupid idea. You're going to say something like, maybe you should think about that. Now that is a compromise that you've made as well, rather than say, well, that's just an effing stupid idea. So, yeah, I don't know. With regards to that, I reckon, people ought to think about that a little more, whether you're actually infantilizing and stunting the growth of people and those around you, or you're reducing people's awareness of a particular issue because you're laying out to them in such basic terms that they don't get to think about it themselves. Case in point, there's a lot of people that have said, example, protests that block streets and stop people from entering hospitals, getting to see, people that are dying, for crying out loud. They go, oh, but we're doing it for the good of the whole planet. I'm going, so you're saying it's okay for you to violate people's consent by shoving stuff in their face and preventing them from seeing people who they care about in their last moments of death, because you think you know better or what is better for them. You don't even know them. You have no idea what's going on in their lives. Sure, you think you've got a issue with the whole global thing, but as I've said before, a lot of things start off at the ground level. Or are they just collateral damage? You know, had a person say, well, you know what, and this person had kids and said, you know what, I don't care if kids had to wait in daycare for their parents because we stopped traffic in the middle of peak hour from them being collected. And I'm like, great. So you don't care that a kid is feeling alone and abandoned in a daycare centre who's going to charge the parents by the minute when the parent has possibly is a single parent who has to scrape and save and like to put their kids in daycare so they can work to provide for their kids. Not only that, but you don't know whether the people at the daycare know that these people are trying to, you know, better their lives, or they previously had history. They might call child services and have the child taken away from them. What about that? But don't worry, that's just collateral damage because you've got a bigger agenda. They've forgotten the little people. That's the thing. That does make me quite annoyed and angry because these are the same people that would talk about big corporations and all sorts of other stuff, say, oh, they don't care about the little people. And I'm like going, well, you're not caring about the little people anyway. So what's with that? I don't know. That's just kind of my point of view. The round robin of consent. It's a thing where a lot of people know and they can read others. You're not letting kids or other people know in different situations how things are. Different situations, different people, different crowds, different communities will have different and varying ideas of consent. Sure, ask questions, but there's got to be a time when you go, you know what, you're old enough, you're big enough to, you should be able to come in and read the situation. If not, then ask. You can go in and just ask a question, which is fine, but if you keep asking the same thing over and over again, people are going to wonder if you actually understand what consent actually means because you're not able to read the situation. That's just kind of my point of view. If you have to keep asking me, despite given signals, or saying that, yeah, okay, in this place I agree, then I've got to wonder at 1, your attention, 2, your ability to retain knowledge, and 3, your actual interest in a relationship, that you cannot file away that information at all. I mean, it's like starting over again. There's quite a few people that hate doing the basics. I'm going, well, maybe if you got the basics right, we could advance on to something more, you know, more developed, more complex, more interesting. But anyway, so what do you think about that? Do you think about it being too simple? Understanding that, you know, when you first start off in relationships or interacting with people, that asking questions is perfectly normal. But when you've known the people for years, having to ask or not being able to read, you've got to wonder if it's something that you're exploring that's new, particularly in kink. By all means, you've got to talk to each other, get feedback, and see what's going on with that. But then you don't have to ask such simple questions of, do you consent to this? You can ask simple. You can just sit down and have a debrief and say, hey, look, what did you think of this? Say no, yes or no, I didn't like that. This did or didn't work for me. But then, what are your thoughts on the whole making things too basic? I mean, things are clear, but I know I find people getting a bit lazy these days with their thinking, not able to assess situations properly, and basically the whole world is their agony aunt. So I don't know. Anyways, we see this issue come up a lot, and you kind of think, well, maybe people ought to talk with others rather than just actually yell, scream, blame, and try and enforce it on people who are actually doing the right thing. People that do the wrong thing will do the wrong thing anyway, despite everything else. So I don't know. Anywho, Tuesday, weird random thoughts on the consent and the round robin of consent, where it comes round at least once every 3 months that I see on some social media. So have a think about that. Are you making things too basic? Are what do you think about, keeping the mentality of that, like not getting people to understand and be able to see things in context and read situations properly, that they have to be basically children and continually ask questions even though they might be doing it for a long time, or they might not advance. At what point do they say, okay, you know what, I'm going to take that risk, or take the risk of being wrong, because consent violations happen all the time, every day, when you technically think about it. Your jobs, there's things that you don't like about your jobs, there's things that you don't want to do, like the laundry or wash dishes, but hey, it happens. It's technically violating your consent, so, because you don't want to do it, but you have to do it because that's just life. So I don't know, interesting thought there. The things that you don't like in life, technically violating your consent. Don't like to pay rent, don't like to live with the government, technically violating your consent. So what are you going to do about it? You're going to cry and whinge, or you're going to get on with business? Anyway, catch you guys later. Bye.